It is time for the Geek Fix right here on Thinking Critical, Patreon exclusive with my good friend Aaron Sparrow. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing well. It's an interesting week. It's an interesting week online.
You kind of ruined my life here, Aaron, because you went out there and decided to watch Ahsoka without me. You sprung it on me, and I felt like I had to take the Pepsi challenge and go dip in myself, and we're going to do an Ahsoka review because you couldn't get up and not watch the show.
I didn't decide to watch Ahsoka. It was thrust upon me. I was at a friend's house. My friend put on Ahsoka. I was like, "Why are you doing this?" And he's like, I need to catch up. You don't have to watch it if you don't want. But
you watched 7 episodes.
I did. I'm sitting there.
It's like 5 hours.
What was hanging out? We were barbecuing, man.
Jeez. Wow. Thank you very much for getting me to go into this thing. It was such an unpleasant experience, Aaron. That's all I can say. I've got 5 things that I think really made Ahsoka not a very good show. But what are your overall feelings about Ahsoka before I get into this?
My overall feelings about Ahsoka are that, again, this is another Star Wars thing that doesn't need to exist. There's no compelling reason. There's no compelling story that needed to be told. It's just content. It's just churn out more content for the channel. Obviously these things were decided a long time ago, before we knew how just colossally they were all going to fail and what a financial drain they would be on the Disney Plus service. It was back when they thought that everything was going to be sunshine and rainbows, and this was the thing that was going to save it. Each new series that comes out is the thing that's going to save Star Wars, and it just digs the hole deeper and deeper and deeper and makes people like Star Wars less and less.
I don't know what Dave Filoni wanted to do here other than, play with the toys that he created in a universe that wasn't in a galaxy far, far away.
It seems like he didn't even really want to play with the toys in his universe as much as he wanted to do something else. It seems like he would have been happier doing the Willow show because he essentially turned Star Wars. Star Wars has always been kind of like a medieval fantasy, but set in space, with cowboys. That's kind of like the way that
science fantasy. Do not disparage Star Wars, okay?
But this is always the pitch, that George Lucas had, kind of like encapsulated it. And so you have those elements, but they were still always done in a very science fantasy kind of way. And this feels very much like it wants to be Lord of the Rings or the Chronicles of Narnia, or, it's got a bunch of magical creatures, space whales that travel through hyperspace, and, just a bunch of nonsense like that. It's got, they bring in the Sith witches, which, the witches of Dathomir, which were really good on the Clone Wars and, were steeped in the Force. It's just basically they're just Force users. They just use it in a different way. It's like a different religion around the Force. So that, it was really interesting with Mother Talzin in the Clone Wars and her relationship with Darth Maul. And here it's just the most boilerplate kind of witchcraft thing. It just all feels like he's trying to do a medieval fantasy show within Star Wars. And I get that, he probably loves witchcraft. We've seen recently his witchy poo wife, and her takes on the internet. So, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, we got to get that in the show. This has got to be represent my interests. But none of it really comes together. None of it really works. None of the characters are compelling. There's no reason for this show to exist. And the idea that this is going to lead to a movie that's going to make money is probably one of the worst ideas Disney has had in a long time. And they've had quite a few.
It's certainly leading to Heir to the Empire, but not in the expanded universe, in the Disney canon universe, which is, I can't believe I wouldn't be excited for Heir to the Empire, but I am not.
No, because what we want is Heir to the Empire, and what we're getting is the SpongeBob meme, Heir to the Empire. That's what we're getting. I know that people are like, oh, Dave Filoni, the savior of Star Wars. That's been a thing for a little while, and I think he's the Undertaker of Star Wars. He's putting it in a grave along with Kathleen Kennedy. The idea that he could even touch the shoelace of Timothy Zahn as a writer, he's going to take Timothy Zahn's story and he's going to adapt it into his version of it. None of this has worked. Everything he's touched from the expanded universe has been worse for him putting it into the Disney canon.
Absolutely. So let's get into what I think are the 5 really big reasons. We can get into the micro stuff, but let's look macro at why this show just kind of falls apart right on the face of it. I think that really the first really big problem is it's the exact same plot as the sequel trilogy. There's an entity out there that people want to know where they are. In this case, it's actually Thrawn and as well as Ezra. They were lost, I guess, at the end of the Rebels show. And there's a secret map. I don't know who created the map or how it even got to where it is that will actually take you to where you're supposed to be. And then people are wanting to get their hands on the map. And once they find out where the map is, they're going to go there and find that person. And all the beats felt very, very familiar.
Mm-hmm. And familiarly awful. It wasn't a good idea in the sequel trilogy. It's not a good idea here. This map MacGuffin, is this all that you have? Is this all that's left? Is,
the mystery box.
The mystery box, but it's just setting up fetch quests. And that's what the Mandalorian became. That's what this became. It seems like that's all they can do. If you want to do fetch quests, get some video game writers in who actually have written some good video games and tell a compelling story while you're going on the fetch quests, because that's the big problem, is we're not getting
And also
anything.
somebody that's created a puzzle or something that actually feels like a mystery. When you look at the puzzle itself, the map that you have to put together, there's only like 34 combinations or something like that. You would have accidentally found it.
You would have
But
just
it's
messed
supposed to be
around
like the
with it.
biggest mystery in the world because you can click it 3 different ways.
Yeah, it's not like it's the Lambent configuration from Hellraiser where it's, it's like
No.
always shifting and you don't really even know what you're doing. It's like Sabine basically gets it. It's like, oh, Ahsoka's like too dumb to do it. She's like, I need to take it to Sabine because she's an artist. She'll know what to do. She thinks outside the box. And you get it to Sabine and she's just like, click. Oh, there it is.
It was so
Done that by
dumb.
accident.
Yeah, the map was an enormous letdown, and I was like, I think a 4-year-old would have figured this one out within, I don't know, a couple hours. A Rubik's Cube, it was not. Let's just put it that way. It wasn't much of a challenge whatsoever. So you basically get the same plot, with the map, and, you got to get the Thrawn or Ezra, whoever you're looking for. The other really big thing that I think was almost jarring is somebody that watched a lot of the Clone Wars, most of Rebels. I didn't actually see, I think, the last 2 seasons, but I never saw Boba Fett. The fact that this is a direct sequel to all 3 of those shows, and all 3 of those shows were like released 15 years apart, and all of a sudden, if you missed any of them, you're going to be pretty lost on this. I don't even know, honestly, because I never watched the end of Clone Wars. I'm sorry, Rebels. I don't know why they think Ezra Bridger might be alive.
No, and I don't know why they think that we're going to be invested in that. Those shows were a long time ago. You kind of like ended them on the cliffhanger mystery of what happened to these characters. And sometimes that's fine. Sometimes it's fine not to get the answers. When they ended Angel before they went and did the terrible sequel comics that ruined it, they ended it on like kind of an Armageddon kind of storyline, and everything's pouring through this portal. And the last thing you see is Angel picks up a sword and he's like, I want to slay the dragon. And then he steps out to fight. And it's like the Butch and Sundance ending, because you're like, there's no way they can overcome this. And then you get the story of like, oh, here's how they overcame it. And it's not as interesting as just letting your imagination run with it. The things that you would sit and imagine happened after Rebels are way more interesting than what Dave Filoni actually delivered with this Ahsoka show.
Yeah, and as you said, they were tying directly in, obviously, to the Witches of Dathomir. Then with Book of Boba Fett, I believe, is where you had all the Rebels characters come back. And there's this character, Morgan Elsbeth. Never explained what this character is, her significance, why she was arrested. How is it that she's able to have all these machinations? You're just supposed to know that she's important. But the real problem is, for such an important character, the actress had no gravitas. They did nothing with the script or the show to let you know Morgan Elsbeth was supposed to be important. Like, basically, she just sits there dumbfounded. She has a dumbfounded look on her face the entire time, and just asks questions that I think Dave Filoni thinks I should be asking.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. I've said before on the channel, Morgan Elsbeth pissed me off immediately with that name, because I was like, that's not a Star Wars name. That's that's a fantasy name. This whole thing, for that should have set
Neither
the
is
tone
the
in my head, like it
Purgle,
should
the
have.
space whales, absolutely stupid names. He is not George Lucas with names.
No, not at all. George had his weird names. We had characters named Elon Sleazebagano. We had things
It's
like
good.
that. But, hey, you know what? It's his universe. When Morgan Elsbeth first came on the screen, I was like, oh, no. It's kind of ironic because Dave Filoni's trying to turn this into a medieval fantasy type show, and it got its ass kicked by Wheel of Time in the ratings. A great book series turned into a terrible show, and Ahsoka couldn't even beat Wheel of Time. If that doesn't show you how low interest in Star Wars is, I don't know what to tell you. If that doesn't tell you that it's going in the wrong direction, I don't even know how you can course correct, because you can't see the forest for the trees.
I believe I probably consumed a good 75% of everything that leads into this show. It almost felt like inaccessible to me. And I can't even imagine how anybody would feel that actually hadn't watched any of it or been exposed to any of it. You would be completely lost to everything going on.
If the characters were compelling, you could have been hooked in, but everybody's boring. The thing that really boggles my mind about this show is someone who liked Clone Wars, who liked Rebels, and who liked those characters. They're unrecognizable. I don't. They made me dislike Sabine, which was a character that I loved in Rebels. They made me dislike. Character. Yeah, made me dislike Ahsoka because she's so boring. And I know Rosario Dawson is a better actress than this. So the only place that you can really hang, the failure of this on is Dave Filoni and the directors, because they didn't get a good performance out of Rosario Dawson. They didn't give her anything to work with. All she does is fold her arms and look stoic. It's like as if George came in and, his note was always faster and more intense. And the note that they were given here is slower and less interesting.
This is the third thing that I'll mention that I thought was a really big mistake for the show. If you have watched Clone Wars, if you have watched Rebels, you know who Ahsoka is. She's not a Jedi. She was being trained by Anakin. She was disillusioned and left the Jedi Order and is basically her own entity. Is she a Force wielder? Absolutely. Is she in touch with the light side of the Force? Absolutely. Is she a Jedi? Absolutely not. She's not a trained Jedi. She never joined the Order. She actually turned their back on him. She's not a dark Jedi, but she's certainly not a Jedi. And they keep calling her Jedi over and over again, because I guess that's the only word that they can come up with to describe what Ahsoka is. But she's not a Jedi, and she would never have a Padawan. Obviously, and they think Sabine's going to be her Padawan here, which is another big mistake. Sabine has never, ever had any type of Force powers whatsoever. It's never been presented that she even had the slightest bit of connection to the Force and could wield it in any kind of way or be wielded by it. She has basically no connection to the Force. Even the robot that has trained every Padawan, in the Jedi Order for 1,000 years or whatever, when he trains her in the show, he says, this is the worst Jedi Padawan we've ever had in the history of the Order. She has no connection to the Force. She shouldn't be being trained because she has no business being here. And then all of a sudden at the end, she's, force pulling lightsabers. She's jumping, 2 football fields apart and pushing fucking Ezra onto the bridge of his ship. For somebody that's supposed to know Star Wars like Dave Filoni is, inside and out, I don't think he gets the concept of a Jedi and why you would ever select a Padawan. She's literally the last person in the world that should be a Padawan. The only person in the show that should have been selected to be being trained by Ahsoka, maybe to use some Force powers, is probably Jason.
It's so disappointing because, all of this just feels like it's just to tear away at Luke Skywalker, tear away at Luke Skywalker. So you've got Sabine, who, like you said, has no affinity for the Force whatsoever. Except she does, because she's got ovaries, Wes. And as we know, the Force is female. So she was always awesome inside. She just had to realize it.
She was always awesome, that she never had the Force. Han Solo was always awesome, and he never had the Force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this idea to, oh, look, we're blending the Jedi and a Jedi Mandalorian. Isn't that cool? Yeah, it was cool.
There's 2 of them now.
Yeah, well, it was cool when they did it before in the expanded universe. It's not cool now because the Mandalorians aren't cool. Because you've had 3 seasons of a show that tore away at the Mandalorians and made them look stupid. So none of this matters. None of it has any weight, and I don't care about any of it. And they can't make me care about it because they've just cut away at all the underpinnings that built up the franchise that I actually was invested in.
Yeah, and then the characters that I was invested in, like a Sabine, like I said, she's my second favorite character in Star Wars Rebels. I really like Kaden Jarrus. Obviously, he's not coming back because he really did die. But I thought she was the second most compelling character on that entire show. And this isn't her. It's just like a husk of what Sabine was back in the day. But now she's super stoic all the time. And even when you say something that should get an emotional response, and let's remember, the minute that Darth Vader mentions that Luke has a sister and maybe he'll go recruit her, Luke lost his absolute shit and almost turned to the dark side trying to kill him. Because that's how emotional his response was to that moment. They try to do that to Sabine. Nothing happens because she's just the most stoic Jedi in the history of the world outside of Ahsoka.
And all the performances are bland from the main characters. The only person that's bringing it is Ray Stevenson. And I wish it was a Balin show. Although if he was the focus, they'd probably screw that up too. But at least he is compelling. At least he has presence. And no one else in the show has presence. And you want to talk about emotional resonance. The whole build of this, if you liked Rebels, the whole selling point of this is what happened to Ezra. Sabine wants to be reunited with Ezra. She basically betrays Ahsoka so that she can go back.
The entire galaxy, really, because she gives them the keys to bring the last general left that could actually come back and defeat the New Republic.
Yeah, so she basically puts all that in motion for Ezra. So he must be important, right? And then when they meet, it's just casual, hey, what's up?
What up?
Yeah, like
Took you long enough.
And it's like it's played to be cute, but it's not cute. It's like that should be an emotional moment. It should be an emotional moment for the characters, and it should be an emotional moment for the audience that is supposed to be invested in her finding Ezra. She just betrayed the galaxy to do it. Now, fortunately,
she might have damned everyone to death just for this moment.
Now, fortunately, maybe she's the only one that understands how stupidly Thrawn is going to be written. So he's not going to be a threat to the galaxy because he is an absolute idiot in this show. He has no charisma, no presence, just like everybody else. It's such a destruction of a character that people loved. In the expanded universe, Thrawn was interesting because he was the antithesis of Vader. Whereas Vader was, you fail Vader, he's going to kill you on the spot. Vader is filled with anger and filled with rage. And even though he holds like a lot of it in, he will kill you on a dime. And Thrawn is more cold and calculating. He's a villain that like thinks militarily. He's always 4 steps ahead of you, playing 4D chess, as they say. Except he's playing, 4D Dejaric on, multiple boards at once. That was the way that Timothy Thrawn wrote him. That's the way that Timothy Zahn wrote him, because Timothy Zahn is a smart writer. And when you take a character like that is a smart character written by a smart writer, and you hand it to somebody like Dave Filoni, who's not a smart writer, he's kind of been exposed with this show as somebody who just takes other ideas and like crams them in and tries to make them work. And without the guiding hand of the people at Lucasfilm that were there under George, it's all falling apart. The Emperor has no clothes. When you hand a character like that to Dave Filoni, this is what you get. A guy that keeps doing stupid things, they fail, and then he says, well, it was all part of my plan all along. Everything's going as it's exhausting.
I remember when he was introduced in Rebels, and this is my number 5 thing I was going to say, is Thrawn is an enormous wet fart. I kept waiting for him to do something cool in Rebels. And one of the reasons I kind of dropped off was when I moved, and then I just wasn't all that interested. I was like, I've been waiting for Thrawn to show up for so long, and then he just never really does anything. And now that I see him here, the worst part about the character probably was just the look. Why does he look so old? Why is he so out of shape? Like, Thrawn always had like this enormous physical presence about him, not only just the blue skin and the red eyes. He's got a personal charisma about him, but he just had that command presence just by standing there. And you certainly got that in the books. You certainly got it in the comic book adaptations. And you don't get this in the show whatsoever. You're like, why is this guy so pudgy?
Ray Stevenson would have been a better Thrawn than the guy. I know this is the guy that did the voice.
They should have got the guy that played Terminator 2. He's got the same face, but he's in shape.
There you go. But again, you'd have him looking old. Thrawn is a Chiss, and people are going, well, he's supposed to be like 70. And I'm like, yeah, but he's from the Chiss ascendancy. They don't necessarily age the same as we do. Thrawn was always described as being handsome and charismatic, and even though he had blue skin, people still found him attractive. Even if you were from another species, like you were still drawn to him. He had a gravitas, he had charisma, he had a good look, and none of that is communicated with this actor. The blue makeup looks terrible. It's maybe way too dark is the problem. The eyes don't look good. He looks like Elon Musk. He's got a bad wig that is obviously a wig. Every time you see him on screen, you have to like avoid laughing because he has no charisma. He has no presence. There is no gravitas to this character. And all Dave Filoni could think of to have him do is stand around, just bark orders that end up being
the exact same tone the entire time, whether things are going well or not.
Yeah, send out 2 TIE fighters. That'll work. Oh, that didn't work. It was all part of my plan. And he doesn't even have any like kind of villainous, cold, calculated. He's just boring. Everything in this show is boring. And Thrawn is perhaps the biggest crime of all because Thrawn was a great character, and now he's been brought down to Dave Filoni's level. And I can't stand it. I hate it so much.
Yeah, so that was going to be my number 5. Number 4, this is the last thing that I thought was overarching that really held back the show and was one of the real compelling reasons why it sucked so bad. The Ahsoka-Anakin relationship is really forced into here. They'd already explored the Ahsoka-Anakin thing, his turn to the dark side, becoming Darth Vader, obviously, during the Rebels show, and I thought it was done pretty well. You had that one fight where Ahsoka didn't win, but she didn't exactly get her ass kicked either. She definitely lost, but she got a couple licks in there. I think she might have sliced up his mask a little bit, But
I mean,
he did get his hands.
everybody does.
But I think he got his hands on the Sith holocron in that one and got away with it. But that was the end of the relationship. That was the moment that Ahsoka realized she could never turn him back. He's too far gone. He's with the dark side, and I'm going on my own journey. She'd already done that before, but that was when it was set in stone. I think Kanan had tried to bring her back a couple times. She's like, no, I'm my own entity. And you get like this entire episode where she dies, which was absolutely insane. She's knocked over a cliff, basically is underwater for about 30 hours straight, yet somehow still lives because she's like training within the map itself, kind of, with Anakin until they go back in time. And there's supposed to be all this emotional resonance to it. And it's like, this stuff was already resolved. I, as a viewer that has watched so much of this, there is no way in my mind that you could ever actually make Ahsoka turn to the dark side. She already knows who she is. She's decided not to go down that path, and she's done it multiple times. And they want it to be like this big revelatory moment. And there's no revelation here. It's already been established. It's a waste of time.
Well, the only reason that it's there is so that they can jangle the keys. You know, they have access
member
to
berries, yes.
access to
C-3PO's got to be in the show.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and
Mon
don't
Mothma.
I'll get to C-3PO. But you know, you have this opportunity to bring Hayden Christensen back, which, you know, it will be the member berries that gets people hopefully talking about your show, and they went for it. But ultimately, it doesn't mean anything. It's nice to see him. I like seeing him in a Clone Wars kind of setting, since we didn't really get that in the live action. We didn't get that version of Anakin until the Clone Wars played out. And yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see Christensen. I'm glad he got a check. But it ultimately doesn't mean anything. And Ahsoka's so boring that putting her against Anakin just devalues the character of Anakin. I didn't feel anything except for, oh, hey, good for Hayden. You know, that's the only thing that I felt in that scene.
And I want to mention this too, because it's not one of the bigger things, but this has some of the worst Jedi Sith lightsaber fights I've ever seen in my life. Like, these are like the quality of what is it, Sir Alec Guinness that was playing Obi-Wan when he was in his like 60s or whatever, fighting like the 7-foot guy that was playing Darth Vader when they weren't really all that fast. That's how slow some of these lightsaber fights are. Nothing like the prequel trilogy when they were pretty awesome. Yeah,
Rosario Dawson, I don't know how much training she's gotten. I don't know if she's just physically unable to do it. She's not that old, but, you know, if she's not able to do it, or she's clumsy, you know, she's not able to do it, then get a body double in there. And, you know, give us some stuff that's fast and that's interesting. The only lightsaber fight I thought was interesting was when she was fighting Baylan. And it was because Ray Stevenson's such a big dude. He was using the lightsaber like a broadsword. And I was like, so his style was different. And I was like, oh, this is interesting, because he's just basically battering her down.
He had more of a Bane style from the EU.
And I loved that. But you know, and the other problem is that everybody with the lightsabers is just kind of equal until they're not.
We're going down a dark path here, Aaron. Whoever, and I'm pretty sure it's Dave Filoni, decided that lightsabers needed to be able to spin and become fucking helicopters needs to be drawn and quartered. That is not how fucking lightsabers work. I'm fucking so tired of seeing this played out anywhere. I can't believe they actually brought it into the live action stuff. It looks so fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's I'm Mary Poppins, y'all. It's what it feels like, except that was actually fun and cool. And every time, even on Rebels, when it was in the cartoon, and I would see that, I would just be like, oh yeah,
what is it, Sister 3 or whatever her name was?
There's been a lot of dumb things added to Star Wars since Disney bought it, and this is perhaps one of the dumbest. Cannot stand that. On another note, because I do want to touch on this, Hera should be court-martialed. Hera is awful in this show. I don't blame Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I love her to death. You know, I think she's great in a lot of things that I've really enjoyed her in. But like everybody else, she is not served by these scripts. She's not served by this direction. She's not served by this show. The fact that she disobeys orders, the orders of the council. They meet, they make a decision, they tell her, no, you can't go after Ezra Bridger. She does it anyway, and she gets people killed. She accomplishes nothing. She endangers the entire galaxy. Again, because in the lore of the show, we're supposed to think that Thrawn is competent, even though he isn't. So, you know, in that sense, she endangers the entire galaxy. She comes back, and they have to have their little slam the patriarchy moment, because they have the guy say to her, you disobeyed orders. And she's like, no, I disobeyed your orders. Because you're a man. It's like, no, you disobeyed the council's orders. And then Mon Mothma even does this smug little, slay queen, you know, kind of like smile. And it enraged me. And then they devalue Princess Leia by having C-3PO show up, because if you have a child's birthday party and you say, we're going to have C-3PO, Anthony Daniels will show up and demand the role. So Anthony Daniels comes in as C-3PO, more member berries, oh, look at C-3PO, so that shills on YouTube can start crying, fake crying. Woo, it's
Kevin
so great.
Smith.
Yeah, exactly. He comes in and he says that, oh, Leia authorized her mission. So now Leia is complicit in her disobeying
The
orders
deceit,
and getting
yeah.
people killed. And by the way, it's character inconsistent even in their own stupid universe, because in The Last Jedi, this is what she dresses Poe down for, slaps him across the face, and demotes him, even though he was successful in protecting his fellow soldiers. He gets demoted, but she actually goes to bat for Hera, because I guess, it's okay when a woman does it.
Speaking of Last Jedi, there's a moment in here that another one that I was just mad. This is micro stuff. But when they've got the enormous ring that's going to tote them into super hyperspace to get them to where fucking Thrawn is, and the rebels, I guess it's the New Republic, are flying at him, General Hera, General now, I don't know why, and there's like 8 ships. They go into hyperspace and fly right through them, and they live.
Yeah. Because it doesn't matter, Wes. It doesn't matter. None of this matters.
I guess physics doesn't exist in Star Wars. Previously set rules when Han Solo says, flying through hyperspace isn't, easy, kid. You got to do all the exact calculations, because if you fly into a star, you're going to die. Mm-hmm. You can just fly through ships now.
Yeah, bounce too close to a supernova.
Yes.
And in The Last Jedi, flying through a ship just obliterates it. None of the rules matter, because it's just whatever we need at the time. And this is my problem with modern writing, is that no one ever says this happens, and then what is the logical result of that? Okay, does that work? Okay, then we need to restructure. No, it won't work because of these previously established rules. We need to restructure it. Nobody thinks like that. Everybody just goes into this like, I want this to happen, so I'm going to make it happen. And it's like, it doesn't matter if it makes any sense. And Star Wars, Disney Star Wars especially, is really getting away with that, because they always just lean into what I used to jokingly refer to. When I'd be watching Star Wars and a friend would be like, that's impossible. How does that happen? I would just go, the Force. And it was just a big joke, because
she literally survived 30 hours of drowning because of the Force.
Yeah, but now that's literally what happens. It's like, well, just the Force. Just hide it in the mystery. We don't have to have a logical, cohesive universe. We can just hide it all in the mystery. And that's why none of this works. Yeah,
I was less than impressed. I will give them this. It does look, the costumes and some of the stages and the settings do kind of feel Star Wars. Certainly the sound effects do. But the story and characters, absolutely not.
No, it's got the window dressing of Star Wars, but it's not. It's not real Star Wars. None of the Disney Star Wars is real Star Wars. I like Rogue One, but everything else is just. It's just a facsimile. The fact that people keep hanging their hopes that this new thing is going to be the thing so there's just too much damage done at this point. As long as the sequel trilogy exists, none of this matters. So
that is our review of Ahsoka. I don't know why you did this to me, Aaron. I mean, I still like you. We're still friends, but that's a demerit, sir. It's going on your permanent record.
We're side-eyeing each other now.
Aaron Sparrow made me watch Ahsoka because he couldn't get up and say I've had enough at his friend's house. He's actually sat down for 5 hours and basically finished the entire show. Now, we are not done, Aaron.
In my defense, there was tri-tip.
Yeah, to flip the old brisket again, huh?
That's right.
So we are not done, Aaron. This is the first 30 minutes, and we got our review of Ahsoka in that we promised last week. But we're still going to talk about Mags wanting to trans up Connor Kent. We've got a few other stories, all the behind-the-scenes stuff going on with the Aquaman 2 sequel. You're also going to lose your mind about superhero dolls as well?
Yeah. Why the hell not? Yeah, the whole Connor Kent thing is really blown up for me on Twitter. All
right, so Rich Johnston called you out personally, and we're going to talk about it, obviously, on the Geek Fix podcast, which will be on the Patreon. If you're not a member of the Patreon, but you still want to listen to it, you can get a week's free preview or whatever. Go to Patreon, sign up. As soon as you do it, just cancel it, listen to it for a week, and definitely want to check this one out because Rich Johnston put Aaron Sparrow on blast, son.
Yeah, the creator of Science Thorology is going to school me about some writing.